Thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk and connect with God through Liberty Church. We believe this will help you see your best life right now.
What an honor and privilege it is to cheer you on as you embrace God's grace so you can experience the faith, hope, and love of Jesus.
Everybody, hi, I'm Heather. You can be seated. Thank you for having me. I want to just give a couple of thanks. First of all, I want to say thank you to Pastors Don and Lon for, when you're a lead pastor of a church and you take a risk when you call some crazy person out from South Florida to come and share your stage with you. I don't take it for granted that you guys put that kind of trust in me, so thank you. I also want to thank Laura for coming and curling my hair yesterday. Because I am, the way I am with my hair is the way I am with lawnmowers and grills. If I touch it, I mess it up. So thank you for allowing me to be up here and have normal looking hair. I love this church. Oh my gosh. This isn't in my notes, so I'm stuttering because I'm not rehearsed to say it, but also because I'm just at a loss for words. The building, the love, the palpable hospitality, the breath of fresh, joyful spirit when you walk onto the property. I don't know what you guys are drinking or sniffing, but I want it, and I want a lot of it. So you guys are killing it in this community. Great job, great job. For the sake of time, I'm gonna tell you guys my story in 5 photographs, and the awesome slide ninja said he's gonna work with me. So the first slide is when I was 8 years old. I think we have a picture of, yeah, there we go. Oh, nice, that looks, look at the little tape in the Polaroid you made. Wow, that looks great. Okay, anyway, this is me in 1981. So that was like a hot minute ago, right? But at this age, we were living in Bowling Green, Ohio, and I went upstairs to my little bedroom on 254 South College Drive and got out my butterfly stationery, and I wrote a suicide letter to my grandparents and mailed it to them, and they were obviously concerned, so they turned that letter over to my mom and dad, and my mom and dad did the best they could with what they had at that time and called the local church. And a deacon came over and he prayed with me, and then we just kind of moved on from there. And then the next time this kind of manifested in my mind was in 1988. I think we have a picture of me in 1988. Okay, all right, well, first of all, I know your outfit is atrocious, but I want to say in 1988, pinstripes were rocking. I mean, I was super fresh then, right here, right now. And the feathered hair, a can of Aquanet, right, ladies? Back then, like a can of Aquanet to hold those feathers in. But in 1988, once again, just started to have these thoughts in my mind that I didn't want to live anymore. We had moved, and I didn't know anybody, and that happens a lot. But for some reason, in my mind, it was a fast track to not live anymore. So I sat down with a legal pad of paper, and I wrote out a 6-page suicide letter, and I put it on the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. And so even though my plan was in motion to try to take my life that day, the doorbell ringing was God's interruption. The next one is 1995, and oh, yeah. Pastor Lon, I don't know if albino cowboys were in 1995, but apparently that's what I was trying to replicate. I don't like country music, sorry. I don't like cowboy hats, and I don't like my hair that color. It's really bad. But nonetheless, this was me in 1995. And this time, I was dating a guy, and it was wonky and dysfunctional. I'm sure that's never happened to any of you. But, I couldn't handle it, and he broke up with me. And again, my brain was just like, take your life. So this time, I didn't leave a note. I took a bottle of pills to try to end my life, and they were able to get me to the hospital and do what they needed to do, obviously, to save me. So next picture is, okay, this is the year 2000. All right. These are scary pictures. But, all right, first of all, this is my husband. This was our 1-year anniversary. For our 1-year anniversary, we went to Biloxi, Mississippi. Now, I know you're like, wow, pastors at a gambling table. What's going on here? Well, we were there praying over them to cast out the sinful nature of the gambling tables. That's the context for that photo. Anyway, right after this, we had been married for 1 year. Not long after we got back, I started to have those thoughts in my head again. I was like, gosh, I'm not fit to be a pastor's wife. I mean, I've battled with wanting to take my life, and that doesn't happen in, wholesome Baptist pastor wife circles that I was aware of. But divorce wasn't an option either, because we were a pastor family. And so I decided I was going to take my life, and went to a drugstore and bought some alcohol so I wouldn't feel anything, and went into the car in the parking lot, and it dawned on me I hadn't left my husband a note. I didn't want him to bear the burden of thinking this was his responsibility for the rest of his life. So I called him on my cell phone in the middle of taking my life in my car. And he was able to keep me on the phone long enough to identify my location, and he showed up, and he was unable to stop me. I had become pretty violent and strong in this particular attempt. And so he had to call 911, and 6 to 7 first responders showed up, and they were not able to stop me. I had become supernaturally strong and proceeding to take my life that they were forced to tranquilize me and knock me out for my own safety and their safety. They took me to the hospital, and they took care of my injuries, and then they came in to let me know that I wasn't going to be sent home. And I was like thinking, they're probably going to keep me overnight for observation. Well, they weren't. Unbeknownst to me, in the state of Florida, when you are a threat to yourself or to society, the state of Florida has the right to step in and detain you in a psychiatric treatment center or psych ward for 72 hours. And that's exactly what happened, because I was not only a threat to my own life, but I was a threat to other lives by the way I was violently resisting the policemen who were trying to save me. They put me in a psychiatric ward in isolation. And July 30th, 2000 was that first night in that psych ward. And I was in there by myself, and it's degrading. I mean, and this was 20 years ago. So we've come a long way with dignifying psychiatric care. But 20 years ago, I've pretty much felt like an animal. I was covered in vomit and blood, and they wouldn't let me shower, and they put me in a room by myself, and there was nothing in the room lest you use it to harm yourself. So there was like a bed, and they locked me in, a security guard outside my room. And I just remember that night on July 30th, 2000, just really having it with God, because I really didn't want to live anymore on July 30th, and he was really interfering with that. And it's weird because you're like, pastors' wives aren't supposed to talk like that. The reason I tell my story is because God can handle it. Because I'm still here. He didn't throw down lightning rods on me because I was mad at him. He could handle that. And I talked to him all night long because he was all I had. And I was like, oh, God, gosh, and I just had a lot of choice words for him. And anyway, all through the night, where I landed was, Lord, okay, you win. And if you could get me out of this place, I'm going to try to dedicate the rest of my life to helping people not end up here, because it was deplorable. And that was 21 years ago, and God and I have both held up to our end of the deal. I have not gone back to a psych ward, though I still fight those battles in my mind, and God has helped me help others not end up there as well. This is a great place to clap. Since July 30th, 2000, I just want you to know that it's not like skipping through the daisies. Wow, Heather, it must be so great. Look at you. You look so normal. I'm not. I'm medicated. I call a spade a spade. I work very hard to defeat the lies in my head to take my life. I work hard at it for 21 years now. I have a recipe for how I'm beating the thoughts of suicide in my head that I still have. I take medication, I journal, I get Christian counseling. I don't miss church. Church on the weekend for people like me is we pull into the parking lot on an empty tank, we leave with it full. It is a filler-upper for me in my mind. I have boundaries, I exercise, I read my Bible, and I know my worth. So that's my recipe. I don't deviate from that, but that's why for 21 years, despite the temptation that I struggled with to take my life, I'm thankfully still breathing and still here and able to party with you guys this weekend. All right, then 2020 rolled in. I mean, like I hear 2020 and I just start like triggered, right? Did you guys, anybody else have like a tough 2020 year? I think we're still recovering from it, right? And now there's like another COVID, Rona, Omicron, Delta variant, they say that's out there. I can't even. All right. So 2020 rolled in, and from the beginning of the pandemic, this is the kind of messaging that I was receiving through various social medias. I want to give you guys a sample of 1 week of email and direct message activity I was getting in 2020. This is 1 week's worth of people reaching out to me. Heather, can you help me? I need help for a drug addiction. Heather, I found my husband hanging in the garage, blue and unresponsive. Heather, my girlfriend is contemplating suicide. I need help. Heather, a girl attempted suicide 2 weeks ago in the church's bathroom. Heather, is there a crisis intervention? My son's on a 10-day binge. Heather, an hour ago, my coworker's wife died by an overdose. They have 4 children. Heather, do you know a rehab for my 16-year-old? He overdosed. Heather, my son's using cocaine and alcohol. Can I get him help without getting him arrested? Heather, can you reach out to a mom whose 13-year-old was found with a suicide note? Heather, can you please help? My mom died of COVID and my sister just committed suicide. That was in 1 week during 2020. So while that's happening in my public life of trying to be there for people, in my private life, you know, I was dealing with isolation and 6 feet apart and social distancing and shelter in place. And everything for me in my private life was canceled. Some of those were the things on my recipe that I need to stay alive. Church got canceled. Sessions with my Christian counselor face-to-face got canceled. Speaking events got canceled. Going to the gym and exercising got canceled. And pastoral visitations to people that were, you know, where I go and visit people in psych wards or at prisons or in hospitals from overdoses, you know, I wasn't able to go and minister to those people anymore, because hospital visitations were canceled. And then in my particular circle, there were more people dying from suicide and overdose than COVID, and funerals were canceled. And so that was happening in my private life, and it just kind of all collided one day in the spring in 2020. My husband and my boys had gone out of town. I was left home alone, which was a mistake, and that's my fault. I know better than to be alone when I'm having a season of depression, but I allowed myself to be, and you know, the enemy moved in on that. And I started to sit there and think to myself, home, alone, with nowhere to go in the middle of a pandemic, a supposition that I had never spun in my head before. And I started to hear, you know, Heather, have you ever thought about, you know, what it's like to be married to you? I mean, you're nuts. And you're married to this nice, dignified, normal pastor. You know, you could go through with taking your life today, and yeah, he'd be sad, but he might, you know, be able to move on and find someone a little more normal. And if that wasn't bad, this one was bad. Then I started to have this like supposition, and supposition is another word for the enemy trying to mess with me. And this supposition was, have you ever thought of the embarrassment that you are to your teenage boys? And I had never entertained that before. And I started to get embarrassed. I am a weird mom. I'm not the normal mom. I go around and help people not die by suicide because that's been my own plight. But I bet for a teenage boy, he probably would rather have one that stays home and makes cookies. And as those started to get louder and louder in my head, I want to share those with you. I know that's a lot of detail. You guys are probably like, wow, Heather. But I got one shot to talk to you all, and I might never get another one, so I got to be real. I got to put it out there. But I share the specifics because I want you to know that what those suppositions were in my head were lies. Those were not truths. And when the enemy tries to lie to us, it's not going to be in some bogus Mother Goose fairy tale. He has an ability to make it wickedly believable. I powered off my phone so I couldn't be reached or located, and I began to make a fail-proof plan that day in 2020 and started to set it in motion. And while I was hearing these lies in my head, I started to get a gut feeling. And I am so honored and glad and happy that I could share this, because I want you guys to know something. If you don't hear me say anything else, hear this. God doesn't give up on you and me when he can't get through to our minds. See, he's God of my life and my body. He moved in from head to toe when I invited him into my life. So he's not going to settle for, I can't get through to her mind, so I'm going to give up. He started to impress something on my gut. He started to say to my gut, Heather, you got to practice what you preach. And I started to feel this impression in my gut that if I would take my life, I wouldn't go out with the legacy of practicing what I preach, that when you were in the situation I was in, there's one instruction: call somebody. And I didn't want to die a hypocrite. And so I started to feel like this get strong in my belly, like I do need to call somebody. Because whether I go and speak to one homeless addict on the street or a illustrious, beautiful, awesome group of people like you in Liberty, Pennsylvania, my message is the same. When you're battling with whether to live or die, call somebody. Call somebody, call somebody, call somebody, call somebody, call somebody. Because whoever you call is not going to encourage you to go and do what you were planning to do. No matter who you call, they are going to do what they can to encourage you to get help and keep living. So it worked. It worked. I went inside from the garage, powered up my phone, and I called a pastoral crisis line for suicide. And I got help. And, maybe for some of you, God would come through with some miraculous story, like you guys might, or, say yeah, I cried out to God and a figment of Jesus showed up in my cinnamon toast. And I was like, and then I just knew it was the Lord. Okay, that stuff doesn't happen to me. I don't see the Shekinah glory on my microwave or anything. All it was a gut feeling. But that was enough. Because I'm still here. So God can respond to us however he chooses to, but when it comes to saving us, he's not going to make it confusing, and he's not going to take his hands off the wheel. He said, I want no one to perish. I want everyone to have everlasting life. And that's not an embellishment. Everyone means every one of us here today and online. Every one of us to have life. So he'll come through. Just might not be the way you thought it would be. So God gets the glory, for my story. I love Jesus as much today as I did when I invited him into my heart when I was 4 years old on Green Road. I love him so much because I've seen him be able to move in and save me when I couldn't save myself. And in 1981, 1998, 1995, 2000, and 2020, no offense, but none of y'all were there to save me. And in fact, in those moments when I've attempted to take my life, nobody was there at all, except Jesus. Because when I invited him into my life when I was 4, he moved into my life and he said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. So you can't get rid of me, Heather, even when you want to get rid of yourself. I'm so thankful for my relationship with God, and I'm so thankful that in the Bible, it's funny because the Bible used to, bore me. I'm sorry, God, forgive me. But I'd be like, oh my God. I have a hard time paying attention, and so, when you open this up and people say, read your Bible, you're like, okay. And it's like white with black letters. There's not even color. There's not even pictures. There's, and people are like, well, read your Bible every day. Well, that's easy for you to say because you don't have a brain that's on fire. So I've always had to pray, God, give me a hunger for your word. Make this interesting to me. Make this as interesting to me more than Instagram. Let me turn to this the way I have habitually been able to turn to Instagram and just devour it. Let me have that for your Bible. And he's answered that prayer because I love this book now. And you're like, well, but is suicide or mental health even in the Bible? I'm so glad you asked. I knew you guys were going to ask that because it is. It is in the Bible. And I am so thankful that in this book, which, by the way, you can't get rid of it. There's nothing we can do. Self-care books, psychology books, mental health books are great, but they come and go. How long has this been around? Forever. How long will it be around? Forever. You can't beat that with a book sale. I mean, this really isn't going anywhere. And so I trust it implicitly. And in these pages, I have discovered people like Elijah who wanted to die. People like Jeremiah and Job and Jonah and David. Take my life, God, I've had enough. That is in the scriptures, the Holy Scriptures. And to that, I want to just make this point. If anybody ever gives you smack for having a struggle in your brain, first of all, send me their address. I'll take care of it. But second of all, I just want you to know deep in your heart, it mattered enough to God to include suicidal ideation, bipolarity, depression, and anxiety in his Bible. If it's good enough for him, it's okay for you. Period. All right? The other reason I love my Bible so much is not only is there people in here that have struggled with mental health or wanting to give up, but I get life from this book. I get so much life from this book. I look at, in the back of my Bible here, I have life verses. And I keep the verses that encourage me to keep living when I get tempted to not. My favorite verse is Psalm 118:17. I will not die. I will live to tell what the Lord has done. My other favorite one is Deuteronomy 30:19. Choose life so that you and your descendants might live. Do you know that on July 30th, 2000, if I had succeeded that day, there wouldn't be a DJ and Andy Palacios. Let's show DJ and Andy Palacios from the beginning of, there's my family. They were born after I was locked up in a psychiatric ward. So I've been able to choose life for myself because of Jesus Christ, but so have my descendants. It's really important that no matter what we're going through, we live through it. It should never be an option for us to take our lives because we can't handle it. Because let me tell you something. A lot of times we can't handle it. But God can handle it. And if God is in your heart, God is in your mind. And if God is in your mind, God is in your circumstances. And God said, with me, nothing's impossible. I think about things that are supposed to be like lofty and intellectual and abstract in more concrete ways because I'm not the brightest crayon in the box. And so I've thought about my life, and I've thought about humanity, and I've thought about mental illness, and I've tried to come up with a way that makes it make sense to me. And I thought, if all of us, if all humanity was a jigsaw puzzle, okay? Like the world's biggest jigsaw puzzle, and you and me and everybody online and everybody in the world each represents one piece in that jigsaw puzzle. If I take my life, I remove my puzzle piece from the puzzle of humanity. And there's not a backup piece in the box that I can find. And there's not another piece that I could try to contort into the place where I'm supposed to be. And that's you too. You're it. You're the only one of you. There isn't a backup. There's not a plan B. There's not an assembly line of yous somewhere in China. You're it. You're the only one of you. You will always only be the only one of you. Which is why whether it's heaven or hell, great or bad, rich or poor, valley or mountain, you gotta keep being you through it all. Because you're the only one. And so I have, as I've kept that word picture in my mind, I've used it to remind myself that that's how much God sees you and me as mattering. That he would only make one. Even twins are uniquely their own piece in the jigsaw puzzle of humanity. And so I've taken a lot of stock in knowing, when in the Bible, God says these kinds of things. He says, I chose you. I have a plan for you. You are wonderfully made. I was in the womb creating you and putting you together. I know your name. I have called you by name, and you are mine. You are priceless. You are worth so much. I laid down my life for you. All of that I have found in the Bible that puts a stamp on me mattering enough to be me as long as God needs me to be me. And I don't have the luxury to interrupt that. God brought me into the world on my birth date, and I had nothing to do with that. And I've got to let him take me out on my death date. Because in between those two dates, he's only got one Heather Michelle Funk Palacios that he needs to be where she is, doing what she's doing, for people she's doing it for, no matter how hard it is. And it's hard. I wish I had a sexier temptation. You know, like people, Pastor Lon, people that say I struggle with shopping, that's my temptation. I'm like, I'm tempted by shoes. I'm tempted by chocolate. I wish I had that. We all are tempted by something. All of us. I'm tempted by suicide. And not only is that not a sexy one, it's a rare one. And I've had to do it a lot of times being misunderstood or by myself. But again, I just go back to, but I'm still here. I'm still alive. And as hard as those temptations have been, I'm doing the best I can. And I want God to call me home. And in heaven, when you guys come and look me up, okay, I know I'm a pasty white girl, but I got moves, people, okay? I'm probably going to be like in the dance hood in heaven, where there's a constant beat from a beatbox and a cardboard on the ground so that I could do the caterpillar. I totally see that happening. All right, so let me land this plane. So 2020, right? But got through it. We all got through it. And during 2020, it was very difficult because I wasn't able to go and make these visitations that I have a heart to make to prisons and psychiatric wards and halfway houses. And so, my friend Julie came to me and she encouraged me. She's like, well, if you can't go and visit people and bring them the boxes that you always bring them, why don't we ship them? And so she just came alongside me and encouraged me to start shipping these life boxes to people and get into their hands the things that I have needed my whole life to keep going. I don't know, anytime I go and visit people at a rehab, a halfway house, a psychiatric ward, a hospital, or a prison, I bring the life box essentials with me as a gift. And so a year ago, Julie and we got some people together, and we just out of my dining room started shipping life boxes to people that were reaching out to me. And in 1 year, it's only been a year, in 1 year, we have shipped, I'm terrible with numbers, hold on. It's too big of a number for me to remember. I had to write it down. In 1 year, we've shipped 1,679 life boxes to 44 states and 4 countries. I think we have a picture of it. And so that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing lately, is I still go around and speak because I want people to hear my story, not because it's good. I don't want to be famous. I don't want notoriety. I don't want money. I don't want anybody to die by suicide. And I'm doing everything I can to help that not happen. And the vision that I've gotten is to give people what I've needed. And so we put these life boxes together, and I wanted to share some stories of some people that have requested a life box in the last year. And I don't want to share this because we want your pity. People like me don't want your pity. I share these because they're still alive. They reached out to me for a life box, and we sent them one. And they're still living. And that's what I want you to hear. We had a pastor from South Africa who was having suicidal thoughts, and we sent him a life box. We had a young boy whose mother was planning a murder-suicide of him and her, and while the authorities took her, we sent the young boy a life box. We had a Jewish crystal meth woman in recovery who was depressed and suicidal reach out. We shipped her a life box. And though she's not accepted Christ and has not become a Christian yet, she reached back out to us and asked for some life boxes for some of her friends in recovery. We had a mom who's suicidal because her daughter killed her boyfriend and then took her own life last week. And this week we got a request from a chaplain at a military base to send life boxes to the troops. And I know that a life box can't save people. I'm not that smart, but I'm not that not smart. But I know that in every one of those life boxes contains the essentials of Jesus' word and a journal and a pen. And those have saved me. God has used his word. You know, when you're locked in a psychiatric ward in isolation, all you have is Bible verses that you might have learned in Sunday school. But those were plenty. So I just want to end with praying for you, because I know there's actually probably two kinds of people here today. There's people who this is your struggle. Mental illness, mental affliction, maybe even suicidal thoughts. I want to pray for you. But there's also another group here today. There's people that know someone that has died by suicide. And I recognize that because I get the life box requests for the grievers often. So I want to pray for you too. And all the way from South Florida, Julie, Marilyn, and I brought life boxes for you guys that are in the lobby. And so after service, if you need one, we'd love to have you stop at the table and get one. Or if you know someone that needs one, we'd love to have you stop and get one for them. Let me just pray for you guys and then get out of here. By the way, I'm pretty sure I have frostbite on every auricle and orifice and organ in my body. I don't know how you guys do it. I wish I need that tough skin. I am in a constant, I almost preached in mittens today. I asked these guys, would they laugh at me if I preached in mittens? But I didn't. I just can't feel my fingers right now. Let me pray for you guys. God, I lift up anybody right now, online or here, who is just struggling with battles in their mind. And I just speak to the enemy that's trying to duke that out with them. Enemy, you have no right to these people, and you have no right to me. Our minds are God's territory. In the name of Jesus, back off, back up, back away. Breathe life into all of us right now, struggling in the dark places of our minds. Breathe your life, breathe your light, breathe your hope, breathe your freedom, breathe your love, breathe your grace, breathe your victory into all the dark places in our mind. We trust you with our lives. Give us life when we're battling to give up. And Lord, I also just want to pray a blanket of mercy and grace over anybody that's lost anybody to suicide. That is a hurt that many don't understand. Lord, I pray that you would descend from where you are to where they are, and in their atmospheres, you would meet them in a most personal and meaningful way. And you would hold their hearts that are broken and weary and give them an eternal comfort for the loss that they have gone through. Thank you for this church. Thank you for this corner. Thank you for Pastors Lon and Dawn and everything that's happening here. In your name we pray, God. Amen.